If you're working as a health, fitness, or a wellness professional, you're probably using vitamin D with your clients. And I can tell you right now, this video is going to upset some folks because pretty much everyone in the natural world and everyone in the medical world pretty much all agree that everybody should be taking like pounds of vitamin D at a time. It's almost like they feel like we should just be funneling vitamin D like we're doing a keg stand in 1992. But the reality is that too much vitamin D can be just as problematic as not having enough vitamin D. And the science that I explain in this video is totally going to make sense to you. This is going to freak you out.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
And what we're going to talk about today has a lot to do with the relationship between vitamin D and calcium. And just be sure that I'm not telling you to tell your clients to reduce a dose of vitamin D that their doctor told them to take. You want to tell clients that that's between you and your doctor. You need to work with your doctor to reduce any kind of dose. But it's important for clients to understand how the medical world came up with these huge doses of vitamin D that they're telling everybody to take. And most of what we learned here, we teach to our practitioners and doctors that have been studying with us for more than 10 years, and they use this with their clients and they see great results. And we got most of this information from Carrie Reams and Dr. Royal Lee. We like to learn from people who look at how nutrition affects physiology and how that makes the human body work. We really like to look at this stuff about how nutrition is going to affect things, because when you're just looking at clinical trials and looking at those numbers, it can create a lot of confusion. And we'll get to that in a minute when we talk about type 2 diabetics and their vitamin D levels. And what's going to be most important to understand is how this relationship between calcium and vitamin D can affect the immune system. We're kind of living in a time when your clients sort of want their immune system to function correctly. So this can be crucial information. And if you want to dig deeper, there's a great lecture out there by Dr. Mark Anderson called The Triad. And you can just find it out there. I'll put a link if I can find it in the description below. But that's a great lecture that kind of helps understand this information a little bit better. So to understand how this came about, let's look at how these clinical trials work. When they run these trials, they'll look at a person's blood calcium level. They'll test that level, and then they'll administer these big doses of vitamin D, and they'll come back and they'll test the blood calcium levels again. And look at that, wow, look at how much this vitamin D, this big dose, helped us assimilate more calcium. This is amazing. And since we're having all these diseases of low calcium like osteoporosis and osteopenia, we should just have people take pounds of vitamin D like this because it helps us assimilate calcium more. So the problem is, since they've been telling us to take these huge doses of vitamin D, that osteoporosis levels have been on the rise, and they're projected to continue to rise. So we really need to look at what's happening here. So what's really important to understand is that it's calcium at the tissue level that allows our immune system to function. That calcium being there at the tissue level allows the body to signal the immune system, say, hey, there's a problem, there's an invader, it's time to attack that invader. So when we eat food and that food has calcium in it, it's a vitamin D that helps us pull that calcium out of the intestinal tract into the bloodstream so the body can use it. So vitamin D is this big hero. It's like this dustbuster that pulls the calcium out of the intestinal tract into the bloodstream so that that calcium can get down to the tissues where it needs to be for everything to function correctly. Yay, vitamin D! It's really important to understand that vitamin D is crucial for this process, and that's why when you hear people talking about the immune system, you'll almost always hear them talking about vitamin D as well. It's a big part of how this works, and it's really important. Here's the problem. When you take these huge doses of vitamin D, that dustbuster turns into a huge turbo-sized shop vac on crack. So it doesn't just pull calcium from the intestinal tract into the bloodstream, it pulls calcium from everywhere into the bloodstream. It pulls calcium out of the tissues and even out of the bones. And at these high doses, it holds that calcium in the bloodstream. It makes blood calcium retentive. Now the perfect example of this is when a client gets a cold sore breakout. Now, we know that clients will get a cold sore breakout when they have the herpes virus in their body. It's just kind of in their body all the time, but it lays dormant. But when they have the breakout, the virus is flowering and then they get that breakout, and here's a problem. So what's very well known among people who have these herpes cold sores is that lysine is really good for helping get rid of these cold sores. And the reason that it works is because lysine is an amino acid that helps us push calcium back down to the tissue level. So one of the most common causes of a herpes breakout is too much sun exposure. You'll hear it all the time. Oh yeah, I was out in the sun all day, I got a sunburn, and then I got a cold sore. It happens every time I get a sunburn. And the reason that's happening is because all of the vitamin D that the body is making from this sun exposure is pulling too much calcium out of the tissues, and now the immune system is not being signaled that there's an invader here and that needs to attack, so this virus starts to flower, goes out of control, and the person gets a breakout. But when you understand how this works, you can see that these huge doses of vitamin D could almost be the perfect recipe to magnify osteoporosis. Now, I'm not saying that these huge doses of vitamin D are the cause of all osteoporosis. We kind of view osteoporosis as being caused by digestive malfunctions and an inability to pull all the nutrients out of the food that we're eating. So then the body starts looking for nutrients it needs, and it starts to pull them out of the tissues and even the bones. So I'm not saying that large doses of vitamin D are causing osteoporosis, but when you understand what's happening, you can see that this could really be magnifying the problem in a big way. So the real problem is we need enough calcium at the tissue level for the body to be able to function the way that it wants to function. And to bring that calcium into the system, we need some vitamin D. But these high levels of vitamin D can pull too much of that calcium out of the tissues again. So not having enough calcium at the tissue level is problem enough, but when there's all this calcium floating around in the bloodstream, that can cause a lot of other really significant problems, and the body doesn't want that. So the body will try to pee out some of this calcium that's floating around now, and then when that starts to pee out too much, then that can form kidney stones, and that can be a real problem. But even before that happens, you can have a client check their urine pH at home with pH testing strips that they can pick up at a health food store or on Amazon. And as long as they check at least 2 hours after a meal, but not first thing in the morning, they can look to see, is your urine pH higher than 6.3? If your urine pH is higher than 6.3, that's a really strong indication that a person is peeing out too much calcium, usually because they're taking too much vitamin D. Now there's other reasons that a person's urine pH can be too high, but when the body has too much calcium floating around for free in this blood situation, then the body's going to try and pee some of that out, and the calcium is alkaline, so it will raise the pH of the urine, and it gives us this signal that, hey, there's a problem going on that we need to correct. Carrie Reams used to say that if someone's urine pH was higher than 6.3, that's a really strong indication that the body's peeing out too much calcium, and the person should stop taking vitamin D until they get that urine pH low again. Now the confusion sets in because increasing vitamin D levels can really improve a wide variety of health symptoms. It's just important to understand that vitamin D pulling too much calcium from the tissues can create some problems in the long term. And what happens is issues like depression and anxiety and insomnia and all these issues that we see with people where there's low blood pressure because not enough minerals are in the system for signals to travel correctly, a lot of these symptoms can be improved when we raise vitamin D because vitamin D is going to pull more calcium into the bloodstream. It's going to thicken up that blood and raise the pressure needed to push that blood through the system. So now the person's blood pressure has come up, they can function and they feel a whole lot better, and they're like, wow, look at vitamin D did. I'm going to keep taking pounds of vitamin D at a time so I can continue to feel better. So now we start to get confused about the situation because it helped the person feel better and we're not quite understanding the trouble that it can create down the road. The problem is, what if a person already has high blood pressure and they're being told to take all this vitamin D? Well, vitamin D is going to thicken up that blood and raise the pressure needed to push that through the system too, and now the person's blood pressure is going to be even higher. So if you need to understand more about the underlying causes of high blood pressure, we'll put a link in the description below this video so you can understand that a little bit better. But this can be a real problem and can be really dangerous for someone who has high blood pressure and they start taking pounds of vitamin D at a time. It's going to raise that blood pressure even further. And a lot of these people with high blood pressure or high sugar, like a type 2 diabetic, will see on their blood test that, oh, I have low vitamin D. My blood test said it. So I really need to supplement with more vitamin D. So we really need to understand what's going on here. When we look at high blood sugar has the ability to pull calcium out of the tissues. Calcium likes to follow sugar, just like you would follow the ice cream truck when you were 9 years old. So when a person's eating a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of sugars, that sugar in the system will pull calcium out of the tissues. Now here's the problem. With a type 2 diabetic, their blood sugar is kind of always high because they're not processing those carbohydrates correctly, and the sugar accumulates in the bloodstream and raises their blood sugar. So when blood sugar is high all the time, it's going to be pushing a lot of this calcium out of the tissues. And that's going to create a lot of problems because now we have all this free floating calcium floating around, and we don't have enough calcium at the tissue level for the immune system to be able to be signaled correctly. So the body doesn't want this to happen. So the body will try to correct this by restricting the body's ability to assimilate vitamin D or produce vitamin D. It lowers those things, so it's lowering the vitamin D so that higher levels of vitamin D are not magnifying the problem that the high sugars are already creating. So Mother Nature is trying to correct the problem by reducing the vitamin D levels, but then we come in and we say, Mother Nature's probably an idiot. We're just going to do what we want to do anyways, and we'll just cram more vitamin D in there because the blood tests said that they're low. Look at all these type 2 diabetics that have low vitamin D levels. Do you want to be a type 2 diabetic? No. You don't want to be like them, so you should take vitamin D. They're just not understanding that the vitamin D in the body is going low on purpose because the body's trying to correct the problem. So when clients are taking high levels of vitamin D, we really like to see them take something that helps push that calcium back to the tissue level. So that amino acid lysine that we talked about, that can be really good at helping push calcium back down to the tissue level. Another thing is omega-3 fatty acids seem to have the ability to push more calcium back down to the tissue level. Now, we're not big fans of everybody taking a lot of omega-3 fatty acids like most people will tell you, because when someone takes a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, it has the ability to make some people more insulin resistant. So we'll put a link in the description below so you can understand who should and should not be taking a lot of omega-3s. But in any case, just understanding what this can do in helping push calcium down to the tissue level can be beneficial for some clients that qualify to take some omega-3s. Another thing that seems to be beneficial is vitamin K2. And you hear a lot about the ability of vitamin K2 to even push calcium back down to the bones, and it seems to be beneficial there. But we also hear a lot of conflicting advice, and some people may think, maybe it causes some blood clots, and some people say it doesn't cause blood clots, but if you're having blood clotting issues, don't take it. So it just doesn't seem like we really understand vitamin K2 that well. So I kind of like to see people use some vitamin K2, but maybe not a whole lot in case it is creating problems that we don't understand. But these are all things that you can have people take to help push calcium down to the tissue level so too much vitamin D is not pulling it all out. But if a client has high blood pressure, high blood sugar, or a high urine pH, it might be reasonable for them to reduce the amount of vitamin D they're supplementing with until they can correct those issues. And the good news is they can correct those issues. So you can see that vitamin D is really crucial for our immune system to function and for a lot of other things to function because the body needs calcium for a lot of functions. But you can also see how these high levels of vitamin D might not be right for everybody. It's really about looking at the actual client instead of just throwing out random doses that you think everybody should be taking. It's really about understanding how to work with the body instead of against it. So if you want to learn more about helping clients look at their unique bio-individuality and run simple self-tests or tools they can pick up at a pharmacy or a health food store to look at their unique body chemistry, then my book Health Pro Results will walk you through how to teach clients how to do that so that they can start taking supplements that are appropriate for their body chemistry instead of just taking what all the cool kids are taking. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can get the whole thing totally for free, and it'll help walk you through that process. And when clients do have low vitamin D tests on their blood, it could be because they don't have enough magnesium. Vitamin D can kind of use up some magnesium, and they may need to supplement with some magnesium. We don't like to see people supplement with a lot because it can create problems for some folks. But if they're using vitamin D, they may need to take at least a little bit because there's not a lot of magnesium in our food supply anymore. Another problem they may be having is they might not have the ability to assimilate fat-soluble vitamins. They might not be bringing in enough vitamin D because they can't process fats correctly. So a person needs to have their bile flowing correctly to be able to assimilate fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D, and it's really common for clients not to have their bile flowing correctly. So to understand the signs of a client not having their bile flowing correctly, jump over right now and watch our video on 10 signs of poor bile flow so you can get more insights to what to watch out for with your clients. I can't wait to hear about your results.